Hi, Evan. How are you? I will open my camera. I think it's blocked.
Hello. I'm doing okay.
Hi. Yeah, I'm fine. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, I was double checking the links here. I think the issue is closed unless that is in the calling. I think we close it to open another.
Which pull request?
Yeah, I will see here in the conversations. Unless in the meeting notes about the calendar invitations, I think is limited.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's
Uh,
appearing in the calendar, in the notes, together with the notes.
I think, well, no, that initiative is still open,
Yeah.
but
What initiative?
the
I put it
go ahead.
here, I will put it again, Matt. It's because I see in my calendar, that's all. Is in the Zoom link, is the hat marked down notes, and this link, and this issue that for me is not open. Is closed. 404. But yeah, it's just a small note. Not big.
Hey, do either of you have experience with the GitHub roadmap Gantt feature? I've been trying to make a couple issues on our initiative board. Let me make it public. It's private right now. And it's like weird. There's like enforced 2-week iterations that I've been trying. I've made my first couple of issues, and the board seems locked down into like fixed 2-week sprints. So like no issue can span it
You
appears
are
an initiative and iteration, but like we want like epic one, like the first month and a half that we just got through. So I've got like issues defined and written up for like
you are
alignment
making an assumption
assessment.
that
Like
GitHub's issue tooling is sufficient for any useful users.
I want it to be.
I hear that, but that's not the only conclusion that one could come to.
Okay, well, so I've got definitions for epics like we talked about before, and I've already got the first two issues actually created.
Did you actually drop a link somewhere to the board in question?
Let me make it. Let me do that now. Project 80. It's in the notes.
Great.
But let me make sure. Oh wait, you can see it. It looks like it's a private board to the public, but if you're in the org, I see that you're looking at it now. Like
Yes.
I've got these first two issues defined, and they're supposed to like have a bunch of sub issues that we create, which I haven't done yet because I don't want to like make a gajillion little issues yet. And I've seen people use the roadmaps feature to have like what looks like a Gantt, with like epics and then under the epic individual things. And
so if you click on a particular iteration, you can change the calendar dates that it's for. So I just made an iteration that is 11 days long, for example.
oh, did you just move 1780, 1870? Oh, wait. Oh, you know what? it's GitHub's back end. I made a bunch of changes. I'm like, why don't I see them reflected? And then in the time that I joined the meeting and wrote something in the notes, now it's reflected.
Okay.
So you see how that first issue kind of goes all the way till the end of next
I'm going to
week?
delete iteration 4. That I
Do we
just
need to
created.
use iterations or can we make them?
I don't know.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I thought 45 minutes ago, I could just be like, oh, well, I've written up all my issues and
Yeah,
sub
me too,
issues, and now I can just like do some data entry. And like that does not seem to be the case. So,
yeah. The issue, for example, is appears for me right now. I think that you close it or something, but it's
well,
for
no,
me.
the
Yeah,
first two issues are there. I made some changes because I wanted to make I wanted to make like 4 or 5 high level epics. Like one was alignment, which is what we did from August 7th basically until now. Like we determined what specifically we're doing, we refined the scope, blah 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 blah. And then like I wanted to kind of have like, you know, the other epics similarly, like alignment, assessment of the ecosystem, like we had talked about. So why don't we move past that, and I can give a couple updates on what has been done. Um, I responded to your PR with a couple of improvements. Um, I assume we wanted to get like the project board up before we click go on it. There's a DCO thing on
I
it.
mean, I think we can do it in any order.
Okay. Well, then what's there, I think, is good to go. It just doesn't have like milestones yet. But
It
there's a
had
few.
only one milestone. Oh,
What?
never mind. Apparently I wrote more things and failed to push.
Oh, okay. There's a DCO thing on there too, so it'll have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and then I have some tooling updates too. I've been busy in the last week, and I wanted to share a screen and show you the first one, but I'll wait till we catch up. If you have more things to push, then I'll look at that PR just after the meeting as well. But over the weekend and Friday and the weekend, I remembered how long it's been since I messed around with TypeScript, and I figured out a bunch of other kind of minor things. But I now have something that will do what we talked about last meeting, which will
Okay.
go fetch for CNCF projects. Here, I can share a screen if you want, or there. Okay, so I just put it up in a GitHub repo. But basically, this thing will go and query the GraphQL GitHub API. Given it's all data, it's all configuration driven. You know, so like here's a list of repos.
Okay.
In this case, the screenshot there is what it looks like when pulling data for all graduated projects. I've built in graduated incubating and sandbox and generated the data sets, but the screenshots just for that one because colorful
What?
and pretty. And it for each repo, excuse me, for each repo, it fetches the last release and then looks at the artifacts of that release for common patterns. It also enumerates all the CI workflows, and I don't know that I have a complete set now, but it finds like common CI workflows for signing things, for example. Um, um,
Can you explain what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I'm trying to. So here are the graduated projects. This is just a dump to CSV um, of not everything collected, but basically I've built a little TypeScript command line utility that uses the GraphQL API and given a set of repositories, and I start with the repositories from the landscape. So I haven't taken time to make data yet.
Okay, so
or
it
diagrams.
sounds like there's an assumption in the landscape that you have carried over faithfully that projects release a single repo.
Oh, of course that's not true. Again, I just got
Okay.
MVP like last night. So
Yeah,
so
no, that's fine.
yeah,
I'm
what
trying to understand what it is that I'm looking at here.
yeah, let me walk through it. So for example, there are these configuration files that you can feed that it takes as an input that are just a list of owner and repos. And I
Okay.
started with the landscape YAML, knowing that this isn't going to be perfect, and the URL that's in the landscape YAML that the CNCF has for all of its projects, which does define like what are sandbox projects and what are incubating projects and things like that. Um, so it just pulls out one, but really this isn't, some of those repos actually do release from the published URL, but as you pointed out, many projects release tons of stuff from other repos that are in the same org typically. But I wanted to just get this working as like a minimum viable product.
Well, that's fine. I have, hey, I selected a set of repos from projects is a totally defensible place to start.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, and because the landscape is actually quite messy, um, oops, sorry.
I am not shocked.
Uh, I made a little TypeScript thing that goes and pulls the landscape YAML. And even within this YAML, I had to do some smudging, right? Like sometimes incubating is used, sometimes incubation is used because there's no schema for it and it's just hand edits. So this thing
Uh-huh.
goes through the landscape YAML and writes out these input files. I just do it once. Um, and so
Okay.
that's how I kind of got this. Okay. Um,
So I see that you managed to produce a command line table that has some green checkboxes in it
well,
and some
that's
words.
just the CLI output if you run it, but I couldn't find a way to preserve the colors, so I screenshotted it. But if you
That's
run it,
fine.
yeah.
What
But the
does the
actual
table mean, and what information have we derived from it?
Okay, so let me walk through that. So this is actually it also produces everything to CSV and JSON so that we can actually do
Okay.
stuff with it. And up until like 11 o'clock last night, it was still mocking data, right? So it's like this is all very, very early.
I
But
haven't looked at the data yet is a fine answer.
yeah, well, I haven't fully looked at all of the data yet, but here's what it does in a nutshell. And because I have some mocked data here, I can just show you what this looks like. Um, oops, sorry. So I started with some of the repos we talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
and I just used my GraphQL IDE client of choice, which in this case is Insomnia.
Okay.
And so I wrote a fairly simple GraphQL query that enumerates two things from the GitHub API, given an owner and a name.
Uh-huh.
Um, um, it it pulls for each repo like the name, the URL, description, and then and then releases. In this case, I'm just looking at the last one release
Okay.
to keep data small. And then for each release, it pulls the name, the tag, the created at, and then all of the assets, like the individual
Uh-huh.
files. So uh,
Sure.
uh,
Okay.
here, but so like we could look at sig store cosine. Boink. All right, so here is what comes back in terms of what it's actually going to find. And these release assets are the
Is
actual
that the
thing.
right version of cosine?
That is the most recent release that GitHub knows about for cosine using the releases feature, which is not to say that that's the most recent thing for the project. I'm just saying that's what the API returns. And this is
That's not what the web page shows.
again, this is hot off the presses. But that's what the API is returning in this moment. If I go releases last one, order by created at date. What's the date on
That
this?
appears to be the first release.
First.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
2021.
It's V0.1.0.
Here we go.
there is the inverse that you have to change the filter.
Hey,
Mm.
let's try.
So I was trying to understand
Okay, there we go.
what
That's better.
it was that we were seeing. The
Okay,
results seemed strange.
Yeah, so you just
We've
found
now
the first.
found at least one cause.
Again,
now is
I've
the
been
last.
I've just been getting end to end working with like the right shape of data. So I just changed descend to ascend in the query, and now we have the most recent release of cosine, which is 2.6.0. And then here's all of the release artifacts, right? Blah, 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 blah,
Okay.
blah. And then it also enumerates in the second part of the query, this fragment, all of the CI workflows at that point in time. And so like this is build.yaml,
The
right?
GitHub recorded CI workflows.
Yes, exactly. So all
So this
this,
is going to miss out on prow, for example.
oh, sure. I mean, exactly. Like this is like,
Yes.
what can we get from the existing GitHub API, assuming projects are releasing with the releases thing, and assuming that the artifacts that we're looking for, like SBOMs or signatures or other things, are contained as artifacts in the release archive. This is what we talked about last week. Like, let's just do like a quick smoke test and see like what exists. So I need to go update the screenshot. Don't pay attention to it because it's going to find the first release for everything. Again, like I literally didn't have this working until last night.
Strangely.
But yeah, so
Or maybe Kata released v1.0 as their first thing. But
yeah. Again, I was more looking at like what's the shape of the data, and importantly, can I use the GraphQL code gen tools, which I know it took longer than I would have liked. I'm not a TypeScript expert, but so what I do is I start with the actual GitHub schema, and then I generate a TypeScript SDK that has like typed entities for all of the things, because otherwise you just end up having a bad time. And then that little utility, I won't run through all the code now because it's not very old. But basically it goes through and it goes and just does some greps and says, are there SIGs, .sig files? Are there, and so the next round of this is to take this basically working tool now that has the ability to fully mock data. So again, like I will go update the mocked data to be what it'll look like, and it has a mock flag so that you can kind of iterate really quick on doing stuff with data without hitting the GitHub API all of the time. Although the amount of data that we're pulling is very small. It can also it also can issue all the queries in parallel or serially. So serially is handy for debugging, but you can say, fine, right now, I think it defaults to 10, like batch 10 queries in parallel so that, when we scale this up to do like all of graduating and all of incubating, and they're not all just one repo each, we're going to have hundreds of repos. And so I haven't gone so far as to do like batched queries, which are a giant pain to implement sometimes. It's still just doing one query per repo. It doesn't feel like
it's necessary right now.
Exactly. So right, and then it can persist the data so that we can look at it and play with it and poke it with a stick. Anyone is welcome to make PRs on it or work with me on it, but right now I'm happy to say I also kind of learned a little bit about GraphQL code generation, and so I put some notes in there. But the project is the utility, which we could put under the TOC repo, but again, like in the last 3 days, I think I made like a pile of commits, so I wanted to get something working, and then we could check it in there if you want. Or we could check in scripts that clones it from wherever, because we're gonna have other tools that we use too. But that's the current status of that. I think once we have
something that works and makes sense, it makes sense to put it in the initiative directory.
I think so too. So that's why I just have been iterating on a private repo, because
I think it's fine to have unchecked in or elsewhere code that isn't working that you're
but I wanted to make darn sure that I can actually check it in, and that's fine, because like the TLC repo doesn't really have code in it now.
It does.
It does? I thought it was mostly just like YAML, and
it has at least one script for generating some of that YAML.
Okay, so this is like even this one little utility is like a whole nugget of stuff.
That's fine.
So we can check it in there. Then I'll do that once I get it mostly more working. I think it's more pride. I didn't want to like code something up in a couple of days and have like basic issues like you just found kind of like front and center. So, but
this is what I was attempting to get at when I was asking, what do the results mean?
Right.
Because I
Well,
looked
so
at them and like Helm's release was a V1 something, and FluentD's release was a V1 something,
yeah.
but a lot of
So
them
let
were
me rerun it all again. I'm not presenting data. I'm presenting
early,
a tool that can go make some data.
and
But
there were
I
some
think this
green check
might.
marks that I didn't know what they meant in terms
Yes,
of
of course.
coverage and if they were what we expected. So
Yep.
that's what I was trying to say was, is it producing output that matches what we would expect for a project that we know is,
No,
outputting
that
this way?
analysis has not been done to your earlier point.
Yeah.
What has been verified is that like I can make calls against a GraphQL API in an extensible way that's repeatable with mocking capabilities so that you're not always live debugging on an actual API endpoint. And it seems to work as of like last night when I went to bed way too late. But I was psyched because I think that for projects that do publish things via GitHub releases, this approach is way better than REST, obviously, and can make the data that we need, which we can then assess and scrutinize. To get a quick view of what's the current state of CNCF projects and what do they publish and what CI workflows do they use. Obviously, because I'm pulling in the, obviously because I'm using the actual current GitHub SDL, we can expand this. And so I've made it so that it's easy to add new queries and then code gen happens. And then you can write some quick TypeScript that does whatever with it. So that's one update. The second update I have on the running Guac and dgraph and some of the other stuff I talked about, as well as some of the documentation. That's moved along last week as well. You can now run Docker containers that actually ingest an SBOM. I put a link in there. I don't know how much. I don't actually want to deep dive into it because, well, we can if you want. But I paused that last week to get this little utility we talked about working. I like
Yep.
your approach, Evan, of like let's just assess things before diving in. I couldn't help myself though, but I got all the Docker Compose stuff generally working. Docker Compose relative paths and I should never meet in a
Well,
dark alley.
I mean, I think that's also can we get this stuff working in an easy
Yeah,
way?
well, I did. So it turns out that relative paths, and particularly when you use the Docker include directive. So like, there's a high level Docker compose that pulls in all the sub ones. So that's all running. So you can actually like run, make up. And I spent some time on. And I can share my screen really quick again.
So this is actually interesting here because you're using Docker Compose and not Kubernetes.
Well, yes, but that's very much on purpose and covered in the design rationale. And there's a swappable layer. It's meant to be runnable locally and quickly in an accessible way. And most people can run. So there's a fairly so the make file is the control plane, and orchestrates Docker Compose, but it uses an abstracted kind of architecture so that it can be moved to Kubernetes, but it can be quickly prototyped on Docker. Because I also have that K3D environment, and when I started using it to locally iterate, like I didn't want to make the barrier to entry. You can manage your own cluster and debug stuff on it just to
Well,
do
yeah.
anything.
So
right?
we had earlier milestones that suggested using kind for
Yes.
for some of that stuff. And right now we're not doing that, and that's okay. But
Yeah, we're in this initial assess. I think I would like to end up with something that is runnable on kind, and in the design docs that I wrote up for the Docker Compose approach, in that Graphtastic org, um, uh, uh, there's a path to get to Kubernetes once sort of like things are proven out. So what I have working now is I can run Doc, ingest an SBOM or two. I'm running dgraph. I'm working on the ETL bits that like pull stuff out of Guac and put it into a more scalable backend. So I don't have full end-to-end working, but I do have sort of like proofs of life. And it's much easier to poke with a stick and iterate quickly in Docker Compose. Now, once we prove out like that this even works, then we can go make Kubernetes config in a fairly straightforward way from that. And I also have.
were you surprised that it was easier to do in Docker Compose than in like
No,
Kind.
not at all. I mean,
Okay.
I kind of knew that. So I started with Kind, and then I started getting into it. This is like 3 weeks ago. I've captured this in the rationale too. I started with Kind, but since it's not a real distro, it's a tool. I
Okay.
moved to K3D, which is architecturally similar, but is an actual Kubernetes distro.
Okay.
It bundles traffic, a really old
Yeah,
version of it.
I'm familiar with
Yeah.
K3D.
Yeah, so I've got a K3D with modern like current traffic installed separately and using the Gateway API to make a development environment. I've worked out some of like the developer workflows and documented them. Um, uh,
I,
but it looked like it was going to be two things. One, a lot slower to prove out, should we even do this at all? To
uh-huh.
your points, and anyone that wanted to play with it would have to like run a local cluster, and then every time they wanted to debug something, figure it out. Whereas with Docker Compose and some bind mounts, you can actually hot reload a lot of things, and it's just a lot faster. What I have there is a fairly comprehensive make file that I spent a like OCD level amount of time like commenting and working out the kinks, that orchestrates Docker Compose as sort of a MVP way to explore the tech stack without having to be encumbered. Part of the problem too is that the Helm charts for dgraph and even GraphQL Mesh are community maintained and buggy, and not really well tested. So actually, yeah.
I think I have a different point than what you are trying to address.
Oh, go on. I'm still on first coffee, so you'll have to humor me.
Um, to what extent are we aware of projects in the CNCF that are trying to make this experience as good as Docker Compose? Do we understand why the CNCF ecosystem for developers is not as good as Docker Compose? And
Um,
is that a thing that we should socialize as part of this initiative? As, hey, we tried to do this thing, and by the way, we didn't use Kubernetes because there's a big actual developer cost and someone, should be paying attention to that. Or are we assuming that everyone knows that and just gonna not worry about it? I'm
I
okay with
think
either answer.
I think if we fast forward to like the initiative itself in terms of in terms of developing something um,
Mhm.
of value, I think we should talk about lessons learned. And when I went to compose, I also wanted to make sure that there's a path, like there's compose with a K, for example. Really what it was is I had things working and then I ran into community maintained Helm charts that are not like official, that are not signed. And so in looking at like, well, I actually want to put these Legos together in a week, I quickly found myself like debugging Helm charts that weren't quite right. And, just I think we should
Yeah.
tell this story. There are CNCF projects that are meant to facilitate this. One of them comes from Loft Labs, I believe. And there's some others. I know that you have worked on in the past. I remember going to some of your talks at KubeCon when you were at a previous home, talking, about configuration management and um, composable. I don't want to get into your backstory, but like I
No,
know you
that's
go
fine.
deep here. So again, in this early phases of the project,
I only
um,
wanted to call out that we were saying one thing and then doing something different.
right. So
And um,
that's why I'm surfacing it to say like, hey,
I
I found
I
it
have
like I'm never going to be done in any kind of reasonable time. Um,
and I
uh,
think it's fine to just make a note and say, hey, by the way, TOC, we didn't use CNCF's developer tools for this stuff because obstacle X and Y and Z.
yeah, you end up just kind of like in well, yeah, I don't want to speak ill of the ecosystem. I just think that for rapidly,
If we
yeah,
can't speak ill of the ecosystem, who is allowed
yeah.
to do so?
So
Only our critics?
no, you're absolutely right. So So to your point though, like in no way do I think that for the kind of scale that we've been talking about that our that end users have, um, where even, to say 200 S bombs is not a lot of S bombs,
No,
right? Also, one project doesn't have one S bomb, as we know. So like when we get into open telemetry and
sure.
Kubernetes, so even at moderate scale, no one's going to run a Docker Compose based production system, even though technically for some of the pieces we're using, that's the documented way to do it, at least.
I
Um,
mean,
which is crazy to me. Um, but that's
well,
really just because they don't, some have Helm charts, some don't. But I do think that we can prove out the technology approach and then just use moving to Kubernetes, which is I do think we should do as sort of more of a scale up step, but not a inner loop developer iteration step. Um, that being said, I am sure there are many ways I could look at Scaffold and a couple others, but I
I'm not
didn't.
asking you to change things. I'm
Okay,
asking you to document things.
okay, that I have done, and that whole
And
graph
that we
testing.
publish that, make it
Okay,
visible.
all right. I am usually not uncomfortable saying the thing, even if it's uncomfortable, because I wanted it to be a better kind of path, right? But it's
Yeah.
just, and I know I've run Kubernetes in production, like I actually know Kubernetes, like, but
Uh-huh.
but but rapidly iterating can be done, I'm sure. Yeah.
That's
Uh,
fine. My point is only that uh we claimed we were going to do a thing that aligned with the claim we have that CNCF ecosystem is great. And we quickly um got off that route. And I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do,
right.
but we should um we owe
I
it
want to go.
to the ecosystem to explain
Well,
why it's hard and hopefully inspire more people to try to make it better.
yeah, and to be absolutely clear, this isn't like for like a 6 to 9 month scoped initiative. We're in like month 1.5 month into month 2 now. We
Okay.
started August 7th. So I am intentionally iterating on Docker Compose at these early phases, but I think that we need to actually, because there's actually if we want to scale this up, like, and I've actually captured all of this in design specs already, and documents, like there's a whole raft of operators for things that we would want to use, uh, uh, you know, for various pieces of the tech stack that is the right way to scale it up and run it in a serious way against production infrastructure. Um, uh, and I'm also wanted to leave room for there are good ways to do rapid iteration on Kubernetes, as a development platform. But I don't want to serialize the, you know,
Yeah.
learn stuff and then we're 3 months
No,
in
that's
and
that's
nothing to show. So
that's fine. I'm uh it would be a fine answer to say, there are 4 projects that I considered, but I didn't want to learn any of them, and I knew Docker Compose.
yeah, I think that would be a fine thing to say. I think that's more a sub point. The real point is the projects have official vetted, known good, documented Docker Compose configs that actually work out of the box,
Okay.
in this early phase, whereas the Helm charts worked in very narrow use cases, and in some cases were not maintained by the actual project, but were community maintained. Pretty good try, but for example,
Where have
I
I
didn't
heard
want to.
that?
Huh?
Oh, Keycloak.
I'm sorry, what?
Keycloak, the
Oh,
identity service, does not publish Helm charts. They publish how to run a Docker container.
yeah, like that's what dgraph does, right? They've got like,
Uh-huh.
well, that's not true. They do have extensive documentation for running on Kubernetes, but only for like a fully clustered config, where you're
Hmm.
not like right now, my Docker Compose stuff, I wanted it to be accessible. So like a new contributor to this initiative could be like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't have a cluster, but I have a laptop, and
Yeah.
So I just run like two nodes, the control plane node and the data node. I don't run 3 control planes and 5 data nodes, which is like the minimum config for, with Raft on the back end.
Yeah.
So they didn't have like a documented path that wasn't a full-on horizontally scalable cluster. And that also made iterative development slow, right? If you have to wait for everything to balance out every iteration and things like that. So, and yeah, lastly, I'll say that I also deprioritized some of the Graphtastic platform stuff, which is just ideas I've had for a long time, like the hub and spoke composable model. And I just focused in on what do we actually need for this initiative, which is just one of the spokes, right? Which is
Yeah.
dgraph plus Guac
Yep.
plus mesh for the transformation. And so I'm trying to take your feedback from previous weeks and just get stuff working, because it may be that
Yeah.
our assumptions are incorrect.
To
I can
be
tell already.
clear, that text output that you had a screenshot of warmed my heart.
Oh, in what way? In a good way?
that it showed that we had actual information that we could attempt to analyze and decide, hey, is this, giving us what we want in an inexpensive way?
Yeah, it's just a couple GraphQL queries. It's nice.
Well, and a TypeScript client and a few other pieces, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I started doing. I remember we identified those first projects, and I started like clicking around and just trying to like from the outside in, just looking at the GitHub repos, like how's this work? And I found myself like debugging CI workflows and trying to like build mental models on a project by project block. And I was like, no, 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 no. Let's just see what's in the release artifacts. We can do some quick grepping, just get at the data and like.
Do you see why I said
Yeah,
that I thought it was harder than you believed it was going to be?
I think you said that with like a wry grin. I'll keep it clean. Um, but I can tell already, like, and so there's a couple approaches I'm curious that
Uh-huh.
if you think this is the right thing to do, because it would not be that hard at all to take what I have and just add a couple queries. But for example, in the landscape YAML, where like
Mm-hmm.
you at least find these are all the projects and their levels, and here's the one repo, I think it's usually one repo, that the project says is like their front door, right?
The YAML only allows you to express one repo,
Right, yeah. So
which is not
what?
necessarily what projects want, but
Yeah.
the shape they're forced into.
So what? So if we have something, and it probably needs some more tweaks, and I'd love your feedback
Mm-hmm.
once we get into actually looking at data, like what should we
Mm-hmm.
be looking for? I'm sure I'm missing some things, but we have that at least, so we can say, okay, so I've identified that there are SBOMs. I've identified that there are .sig files. I've identified that there are whatever attestations and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
given a repo. We can also very quickly say, given a repo, what org does it belong to, enumerate all repos, and then do that as a fan out. And that's why I implement the parallel stuff, because
Yep.
but by the way, if you do use this, don't check up the parallel, because you'll get there's like a rude noisy neighbor thing. But in any event, the queries I wrote were intentionally
Yeah.
quite small. Um, ask me if you care about how GitHub does rate limiting on their GraphQL API.
Oh, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, you get like 500 points an hour, and these queries are like sub 10 points each. So
Oh, you can get more points than that.
can you?
You may need to create a GitHub app.
Oh, yes, that would be the way to do it. Yeah. Again, I was going for quick and dirty,
Yeah.
or quick and effective, I should say. But I wanted your feedback first, but like I think it's the right thing to do. Would be like, okay, well, every one of these projects typically is in its own org, and then all of the ancillary repos are there. Many of them don't release anything, but some of them do. So it would be fairly straightforward and not hard to say, okay, well, given my entry point of like this one owner repo pair, just look at all repos in the org. Like that'll work for OpenTelemetry and Kubernetes. It's just done, right?
Does it work for Kubernetes?
Well, no, I just mean given a GitHub org, you can enumerate all the repos and then
Yeah.
yeah.
But
to do it
is
in
all of
a
Kubernetes
smooth way, I think a batched query is the right thing to do instead of just issuing tons of per
is
repo
is
queries.
all of Kubernetes in one org?
I don't think so.
It's not.
Yeah, the same as
There's a
yeah, and I believe
Kubernetes
that
SIGs org at least.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know, do SIGs release things that are signed and things, or like that's a good question. I don't know. I
Some of
also
them
found
do,
like
I
some.
suspect.
I also found like GitHub Actions that go, and then in the action that's checked into the repo, they go they go do some complicated stuff. Like
Uh-huh.
I didn't figure it all out, but so it could very well be, that SIGs are signing. I have no idea when it comes to Kubernetes.
Do you want a couple other uh pain things that you will discover in the future if you are
I
looking at
would
this?
love that because I'm trying to
Okay.
run. So
So
informed
um
is going to save me time.
we started signing the Minder binary releases, the command line binary releases with SigStore.
What's Minder again?
Minder is an OpenSSF project I work on
Oh,
that attempts to automate guardrails and safeguards on your GitHub configuration.
oh, cool. Okay.
But in the like 0.3 release, like I don't know, it was a year ago or something, more than a year at this point. We started SigSource signing it because it seemed like the right thing to do. Fast forward to 12 or 15 command line client releases later, and we realized that we hadn't been publishing the ephemeral public key used with key store sigless signing or keyless signing.
Okay, so points for signing, but nobody can do anything with it.
Nobody can verify the signatures. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you may discover that there's additional stuff beyond having a signature that's needed before it's actually useful. And you may or may not want to validate those signatures at this point in time.
Yeah.
And try
I
to
mean,
figure out what you need.
at this point, the intention is just to identify where is there
The
collateral that we can feed into this thing without
Yeah.
having to go generate it. So we know, and so that we can report on what's the starting point in terms of all 200 plus projects. But now I'm only really looking at graduated projects and incubating projects, just
Yep.
because until everything works, or until
It's
yeah, I don't want to
It
deal with
doesn't make sense to try to fix things for 200 if you can't do them for 20.
exactly right. So, um,
And it may or
yeah,
may not make sense to do them for 20 if you can't do them for 5, but
yeah.
we're at 20
Oh,
now, so
so I do. Why don't you finish? I don't want to be Captain ADHD here. So why don't you finish
so
the cautionary tales? But I have a question about our front door README. My initial
I'm sorry,
thought was,
your audio cut out for just a second, and it was an important second.
oh, so
I think it may be my audio cut out, my speakers, but in any
could
case,
be,
I didn't get it.
or it could be Zoom. A minor clarification on your intention for the front door that we have a PR for. Most of the stuff in the TOC, and when I looked at like the tag security front door, and now they're all new templates and stuff, they're all very like very very short, and it seems like that's intentional because my first gut reaction was, well, we need a way to track. For example, we're not using kind or K3D, even though we could in this early phase, but that doesn't match the issue. And updating the issue by editing it is pain and suffering and not really tractable. Um,
Mhm.
so I wanted to like reproduce it in the like. Can we make a detailed README? That would be my what I would
Um,
want to do. But that gets away from like the design ethic that's kind of like ethos rather that seems to be in the TOC repo where things are, things for like community groups and tags and initiatives, and they're much more like mostly white space and really really boiled down. And that's kind of the PR that you put up there was like, here's 6 lines that define what this
well,
initiative, and if that's your
there's some
intention, then
milestones.
I
I
won't put it
wrote
there
6 lines because of 2
because I
things.
didn't because I didn't.
No, um, because I only had time to write about 6
Mm,
lines, And I suspect that many people only had time to read about 6 lines.
Well, yeah, so that was top of mind. So
And so I think it's fine to add a, a details or a notes section, or to have a, see about getting a label or something like that, and, throwing like stuff that we imagine we want to remember for later, and, at some point we'll just heap it all into the bin. Um, you know, issues or whatever you want there. Um, my experience has been that the more the more detail you go into early on, the more stuff you have that's out of date, and you don't know what to do with later. So I tend to have a somewhat terse frontier of stuff written down, which is not always helpful. But I've found that if I build a large frontier, it's almost inevitably wrong.
sure. Okay, I didn't push it up yet. So I think for some of the utilities and tools that I've been working on, I've been keeping decision logs. A lot of it's like me bouncing ideas off friends and
Yeah,
or AI consultants. Like um, I've been able to rapidly do some things not by having AI put out
yeah.
crap code or something, but more as like validating the ideas and um, compiling current docs and
I
things like
think
that.
it's fine to
But a
record those
decision
things.
log is what I
Yeah,
was getting at. That we could have co-located with the
yeah.
README that just kind of like provides an archaeological history so that when
I
if people want to join us or
I
extend
don't
it.
see a reason not to do that. I've been
So
using our notes document for that, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't mind
I really
having two.
value the notes document that you've been creating and maintaining. You're a very good scribe. You have a really good tradition in tag security of detailed scribing. Um,
Well,
uh, so,
um,
but okay, so then then
I
I
use
will
that
leave
to express that I think it's an important thing.
right. So I'll leave the PR that is currently open as sort of like a tourist. You can read it really, really fast, and then under there we can put more detailed things. And uh, thanks for that. So I'll make a
So,
PR to move like I'll basically take the initiatives um, text from what June, May, whenever I wrote it. Might have even been it may even have been late April. I can't quite remember. I'd have to
okay.
look. I think it's June. And I can update it with what we're actually doing now, or what I'm actually doing. Um, uh, and
Um,
I'll take that approach.
yeah. So, uh, something that I find helpful
Mm-hmm.
is when I'm producing a document, I try to figure out who the audience is. And then I try to figure out what's the frame of mind and what kind of information is this audience going to be looking for. And so, like a README, you're probably trying to figure out what is this thing and do I care?
Right.
And if you have 20 pages, um, it actually becomes harder to answer those questions.
It does.
So it's fine to have a, hey, so you're wondering how we got here document. Um, but that is probably not the same as, what is this and do I care? I mean, it
Right.
could be why do I care, but more realistically, since you can't care about everything, it's do I care?
Yeah. Um, Agreed. So
And maybe there's a doc that says you should care about because it has these nasty side effects, but or outcomes for you. But that's probably a separate doc than what is this and do I care?
right. Um,
Um,
yeah. Another thing that I've found useful in addition to a decision log, looking for the example.
I wanted to get back to the other thing as you're collecting these
Oh yes,
artifacts.
please go on. So
That
other things to bear in mind. So the first one, makes sense.
well, signatures are only useful if you can find the public key for them. In some cases, you will have one or more levels of indirection to the artifacts produced by CI.
Okay.
The simplest example is published YAMLs, and then inside the YAMLs are references to container images.
Right.
And those
So
container images are artifacts, but you may have, a Helm chart that produces YAML that references container images as one extra step of hydration you need to do.
So are you saying that you know that some documents, I know some projects rather may do this, or are you saying they do this where they take security artifacts that we would be interested in and then use OCI as a way to
I state that
mitigate?
happens for at least one and probably many of the
Because I
projects.
actually kind of like the idea. OCI is a nice fit, and there's existing
Well,
distribution.
with the 1.1 distribution spec, then yes, there's a good fit. Prior to that, it was ugly but doable.
Is that what part of the 1.1 spec is it? Is like the redirection bits that let you?
It's the related to or the references stuff. Previously, what cosine would do would be they would push a tag that was called I forget ref dash the content digest as a tag, and you went and looked up that tag, and that told you where all the other related SBOMs and signatures and so forth lived.
So okay, so
But
that's
now in the
another
1.1 spec, you can say, oh, what are the other artifacts that are related to this artifact?
right.
And you can pull them out that way. But some folks may still be using the old SigStore or the old cosine mechanism, which was a complete unofficial hack. So you may have to support both of them.
The old mechanism being
Pushing a tag with a special name that you just
I
have
see.
to know to look up the special name.
Oh, I see. So you're making the tag name in code.
The tag name is a prefix plus the
Yeah.
content digest of the thing.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a bespoke choose your own adventure to get to the actual artifacts.
I mean, it's a convention.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I think another convention that I've seen at scale, like I can't say where, but in our previous life where we had millions of SBOMs all the time, and tens of millions of containers, object storage is another kind of like common, like, oh, the build artifacts land in a bucket or in a series of buckets, and that's how they're accessed.
I mean, an OCI registry is kind of a fancy shim over an object store.
Yeah, at least you've got like some rigor around how that object storage is used. Well, I mean,
you may have some rigor.
I mean, if I have tens of millions of SBOMs or a million SBOMs or even a couple thousand SBOMs sitting in a bucket or sitting an OCI registry in front of a bucket.
I've worked with Matt Moore and John Johnson.
Oh, okay.
And I've watched John Johnson's talk about setting up a chat client in the OCI registry.
Oh, okay.
I'll
have to make note of that.
I want to say it was LA 2021 or so, or 2022 maybe. But yes,
Matt
they built
Johnson,
the chat
LA
client.
2020.
I think it was something like Registries After Dark, might have been the title. But yeah, they have done unhealthy things
at the same time.
They've done unhealthy things with OCI registries. So my assumption that OCI registry is well formed and contains good things may be twisted by people.
$21-ish. And what was
maybe
the name
22.
of the talk?
It was the first in-person one after COVID.
Yeah, but you said it was something after dark.
Registries After Dark.
Registries After Dark. I'm a sucker for a good talk. I listen to talks all the time. They're kind of like my.
I
I
mean,
used to listen to music all the time. Now I listen to tech talks.
yeah, it's, I don't know. I hesitate to put it in the good category, but the you'll learn something category is probably uh like never do this, and why would you do this?
So,
But
maybe you could answer another candid question that's
yeah.
germane to this topic. In tag security, a couple of times now that I've been
Uh-huh.
attending regularly, I have picked up on what are to me like veiled implications or innuendo about checking S bombs or other things into Git directly. Um, uh, as an anti-pattern. I don't think it's a good idea of shooting from the hip, but is that another cautionary tale, or have some projects that you know of like used Git as where they store artifacts? Like I can
Well,
see like well I can
do you mean an
easily diff
artifact
them
or an
as
SBOM?
it's revved. Like I can see using Git for that kind of thing.
Do you mean an SBOM or an artifact?
Well, S bombs are at least more diffable, right? Generally, but I guess
There
it's a
there
general
are
question.
there are Git repositories out there which contain binary executable artifacts. Mostly
Oh,
you
are
should
some
feel
security
bad.
artifacts executable?
What?
I'm sorry, that's so again, like I'm not a deep supply
Uh-huh.
chain security expert. Um, I had assumed that all of the artifacts were data, not executables. So
Well, that's cute.
are you saying that there are security artifacts which themselves are binary executables?
Oh,
That would be news to
the
me, but
security
I didn't.
metadata is generally not executable.
Okay.
Um,
I just want to make sure like my mental model of what is correct.
there's some weird stuff that goes on with um ORAS, maybe? I forget exactly. It was one of the stuff that came out of the DS Labs Microsoft
Yeah.
area um, for distributing collections of stuff.
Okay.
Which is
Like a
not which is supply chain. It's not security specific.
right. So is
But
it
they
kind of like
wanted to be able
analogous to
to,
like the old zip files that you could turn into an executable that unpack themselves to be convenient?
they had a different problem, which is
Okay.
they want people to be able to pass around um, portable cloud applications, which might unpack onto Kubernetes or might unpack onto something like Azure
Yeah.
without necessarily taking a lot of dependencies on the local tooling for things like Terraform and so forth.
Okay. Are you talking about CNAB, Cloud Native
Yeah,
Application
CNAB,
Bundles?
that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking of.
at a DS.
Yeah,
Well, DS Labs or Desi Labs is who did
Desi Labs.
that. Yeah, Desi Labs, DS Labs. And that was kind of like a Microsoft Skunkworks, as I recall. But yeah, I actually loved the whole CNAB Porter Cloud
But
Native Application Bundle. I don't know
but
why it didn't.
inside those containers were executables that you were supposed
Right.
to run in order to deploy the
Okay.
application.
Yeah, now I actually
Yeah,
I'm familiar with Porter and
but
CNAB and all of that. I almost
but
built on it, but then it fizzled somehow.
yeah, it was solving problems that Microsoft had, I think, and I'm not sure a lot of other people had the same problems.
Yeah, you needed sufficient
Or were
scale to be
willing to
like, I
solve them
need
in
an
the
ops
same way.
team I can give an opaque artifact to that is self-describing that anyone can deal with because I have such scale that this is all
And
interchangeable.
that
But
they're willing to run with their credentials.
yeah,
Yeah.
that one kind of was a little eye-opening as well.
There was some exciting stuff in there. We looked at it at VMware and decided not to get on that
Yeah,
bandwagon, but
I
we
think that
almost did.
was the right thing to do.
It was, well, I mean, history said that it didn't take off. Was
It
the right
seemed
thing.
like it would. Like it really did because like they had the whole DevX thing down. I think maybe it was like too developer focused. Like it was
I'm not sure,
I don't
but
know.
in any
That's
case,
okay, but
yeah. But
I guess if I
there
synthesize all the
are executable binary artifacts in repositories. I wouldn't expect any of them. I would hope none of them are security related.
right.
Um, uh, I could see people publishing an SBOM in their Git repo because they could keep it updated on every commit, for example, through automation.
Yep. And it's easy to like rewind time and look at diffs from state to
And
state.
it's unclear to me exactly how one locates a VEX document for a project, but my understanding is that sometimes the VEX documents are also in a Git repo.
Okay.
VEX documents are a particularly interesting problem because an SBOM describes the software as it was assembled at the time of assembly. A VEX document is a statement about an artifact that was created in the past with knowledge of events that happened after the artifact was assembled.
Right.
Which puts you in a strange place on the timeline for publishing.
It does, because it's downstream and likely from
You have news from the future.
Right. Okay. That's a good call out. I'm glad we're using graphs as our data store, because things like temporal modeling and chains of events are a little simpler to represent than if you're stuck in a pure relational store and a notion of time where all
I don't
artifacts
think
are
it's a
created in
relational
order.
store problem. I think it's a discovery problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you either need to repeatedly be looking for these or somehow be notified. So it seems to me, after working on this kind of for not that long, I've always been fascinated by dependency management, and I do have a long technical background in like both Windows and Linux and like binary formats and how things are loaded by the loaders and linkers and all of this. So like the notion of transitive dependencies and how to wrangle them is not a new problem, but I'm going to make a statement, and as a domain expert, I'm hoping you can maybe either ground it or say you're not crazy, or like if the world now has various directives depending on your jurisdiction about what to do around generating security artifacts and what is required under things like CRA as well as other policy frameworks. Like the planet has a problem. Everyone's making SBOMs, and that's pretty much settled out. There's a couple different ways to do it, and there's different kinds of SBOMs, but like you can make them. And so people have started making them. But there
Sometimes the
does not
SBOMs are
yet
even
seem
worth
to
the paper
be
they're written on.
like a global registry or like some way to find them or tell the world that they're there. So is what's happening in the industry now kind of like what happened when the United States about 15 or 20 years ago said, hey, healthcare portals should be a thing. Here's a giant pile of money. And then like an entire legion of independent software contractors made health portals for local doctors, and they're all different and they all try to do the same thing, right? But there was there was like a mandate to do it, but not a thought out way to scale it. Is that where industry is now? I mean, that's one of my kind of like guiding problem statements, that like finding them, wrangling them, and being able to get insights out of
SBOMs
a
became
collection of
important
them. What?
because the Biden administration pushed the executive order that said, if you want to sell stuff to the federal government, you got to have an SBOM.
Yes, and that was the Cyber Resilience Act, and I'm familiar with all of it. I kind of watched that happen in my previous employer. I was in the supply chain security initiative group that Emily was running, and so
Cyber Resilience Act is the EU and is more.
Oh,
recent.
I'm sorry, I just had a brain fart. The Biden administration, what was it called?
It was an executive order.
It was the executive order. Yeah.
But
Apple, plenty of others were there, but is it the case though that like distribution, curation, discovery, like there's no npm or pip or
the package registries don't give you an easy way to get an SBOM for the wheel.
No, I mean there's no like registry for SBOMs that has been like MCP has happened all in the last year and a half, say, and just last week the Model Context Protocol in collaboration with like Microsoft and a bunch of others, published like a registry design that's extensible that allows people to make registries with like a global, superset of here are all the MCP servers that are known, caveat
But
emptor, but at least there's a way to like organize them, find them, and that is not bespoke. Does that just simply not exist in this domain?
I think you've given the folks behind that press release a lot of credit.
Oh no, if you read the press release, you can't actually find a registry. It's infuriating.
Okay.
But
So
I
so
watched the
to be
talk, but I just
clear,
mean like I
I
don't
don't
see
think
like
that registry actually exists that you're positing for the MCP servers either.
no. I
Um,
said they published a design or a
yes.
proposal, that's backed that has not
So
yet been implemented. But
if you are looking for a Helm chart, you might go to Artifact Hub,
yep,
but that doesn't contain all the Helm charts.
no, it does not. Most Helm charts are just sitting in GitHub somewhere.
Yeah. So I
So
think that SBOMs are in somewhat of the same boat.
they're in that like limbo. It's okay. So
And in
I'm asking
particular,
because
if
like
you got a
if
free range, if you download a free range binary off a website,
yeah,
there is no clear way
correct.
to match that to supply chain metadata
Yeah.
unless, you have some sort of oracle.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't, even if it's not everyone's using it, or even if it's like I went looking for projects like,
I mean,
even if they
there's
were like the MCP registry thing where it's like it's
Archivista
Archivista.
from Intoto, which you can run yourself to collect your own SBOMs. But that's not quite addressing the problem that you are talking about, which is I have this binary here. I'd like to figure out its supply chain metadata. Or I have this other artifact here, and I'd like to figure out its supply chain metadata.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a metadata question, like like Docker happened, and then OCI happened, and then Quay and Docker Hub and various
Yeah.
repositories that have some sort of agreement based on an open spec about how do we structure this and find it, even if there's no one to find, and
Well,
for
and my
various
point is
language
that if you're
packages we've
selling to the
had.
federal government,
Yeah, but I mean, like the federal
your
government didn't make
containers may
npm
not
or pip,
be
right? But
in a global namespace anywhere.
So are there that of, do you have knowledge of any either like working groups or open initiatives where they're like, it seems like a when not if, right? Like if everyone's making security artifacts and no one has a way to discover them, find them, publish them, verify them, like it would stand to
There
reason
are
that there are
people who would
projects.
really like this problem to be solved. You're
Okay.
asking, are they making progress?
Well,
And
I was
I
more
don't
asking
know if
like,
they
are there places I should go look for prior art or ongoing efforts to inform our initiative? Because I don't know what I don't know.
I am not familiar
Okay.
with a successful initiative in that space.
Okay.
A number of the people I've talked to seem resigned to the situation.
Really? I'm not.
Okay.
I think if it doesn't exist, then maybe some of what we're doing can inform an effort like that. Because I do think that
Okay.
this is like it's a problem that's in the commons, right? Like in the public square,
I do not disagree with your point of view. It's not something that I am currently actively pursuing.
no, nor am I. I just okay.
If you are hoping to actively pursue it, do you know Puerco?
No.
Okay.
I'm still in like info gathering and
Okay.
I'm always in top of mind is always like I don't know everything, like as one of my axioms.
Yeah. So
So
Puerco
that's where this is
was
coming
one
from.
of the folks behind Vex.
Oh, okay.
Adolfo Garcia Vetea, I think. But there's some accents in there that I'm not going to get correct, which I feel bad about. But
Are you putting this in notes or should I write it down?
you should write it down.
Okay.
And we should probably not overproduce a call again.
Over what?
We're at 10:10.
Oh yeah. Oh well, yeah. It's 1:11. Yeah. Last time we went an hour and 40 minutes, and I loved every minute of it. But I
Well,
actually I got to
Yeah.
work on this README and
Yeah, no, there's
I
work
have
we
to
need to
fix
get
a
done.
query that I wrote last night that looks for the oldest thing instead of the newest thing. Because again, I was just making sure the shape of data was handled right, not the data was right.
Well, and my suggestion would be the next thing you do in that leg is to look at the actual data you're getting
Oh, yeah.
and see if, whether it's garbage or not.
I was too excited. I didn't want to wait a whole week to be like, hey, I did what we talked
Yeah.
about and it works.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, as you noted, I have an eye for inconsistencies and poking at them.
no, it's very helpful actually. I
But
mean, you
you
don't
could
see
also
your
ask
own missing
Justin.
commas,
You could also ask Justin Kapos about that, but it does not appear to be a solved problem, and the scope of the problem may be large enough that it does not easily invite solutions.
Yeah, I mean, what I find now
And
are
so, for example, OCI is a much narrower version of the problem, and that allowed people over time to, who were very motivated to reach a common consensus and come up with a pattern for recording it. But that was 2 years of effort.
it was, yeah.
So
there was some slick marketing too. If they said from the get-go, these are tar balls, like no one would care, right? But they made a new thing.
I meant it was between 2 and 3 years of effort from like, hey, look, cosine can do this, to the OCI distribution spec having a way to do it, which didn't actually match the code that cosine had written, and so cosine needed to be rewritten. So that's what the effort looks like, given a small sample of success. And it would need to be replicated across all the channels that you use to get software potentially.
Yeah.
And each would have its own distinct pattern at the end of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right?
So just a total polyglot kind of.
Well, each mechanism would have its own API for getting that stuff. Like OCI has a way of doing it, but if you said, oh, hey, this also applies to GitHub releases, you would need either an API that worked for both GitHub and OCI. 5 years later, maybe or maybe not, you get something, or you would have separate APIs for GitHub and for OCI, and then you would need to figure out, okay, which case am I?
Yeah.
So it's not easy. Yes, people are interested in it. Will it happen? I don't know. It requires some people who are pretty convinced that doing something not easy is worth a substantial fraction of their waking hours for an extended period of time.
And then there's commercial interest as well.
And then let me give you the third piece of the artifacts you find problem. I don't know how OTel is, but Knative has a core and a set of extensions. Some extensions are experimental in nature, and some extensions are not part of the core because architecturally they shouldn't be. They should be pluggable, but are effectively GA. So the same quality bar. And I don't know how you find, like, I know for Knative how you do it as a human, but I don't know how your script figures out once it decides to go wider, whether the artifacts from a given repository matter.
Yep. Or are even blessed, or if somebody just put up a workflow to try to do something. Yeah, open
Security
telemetry.
Insights aims to fix some of these things. I don't know how well adopted it is. The V2 seems to be getting more traction than the V1, which is good because the
LFX
V1
Insights,
was terrible. Security Insights.
Oh, Security Insights. Is that an LFX thing?
It's a OpenSSF project.
Oh, this is the scorecard stuff.
It's not scorecard. It's another different thing.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go look.
It's a YAML file that describes where to find your security information because it's hard to find security information.
Oh. Okay. Let me go chase that down because that might give us at least some pieces of the puzzle for those that are using it. or that methodology.
So now you've added another leg in your.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, if
while
you
we've
were
been talking, I've
wondering
been thinking
why
about
I
how to
had
do
that
like
malicious gleam in my eye,
Yeah, no. This is actually really fun. I mean, I like
you are
things
now
that aren't
finding
easy.
why it is not as easy as it sounds.
Oh, I never thought it sounded easy. But yeah, I'm not surprised. But this is fun actually. Yeah, tracking down, going from your example of like a Helm chart to a Docker image, and then having to make that leap to get to what built that Docker image, and then go find artifacts from that.
Well,
Like there's ways we can do that too that I've been kind of ideating on. Since you mentioned
and
it last
hopefully the
week.
Helm template produces something useful enough that you can figure out the container images from it, or the
Sometimes
YAML,
you can't. I've also found that
actually produces container image contents that you can pick out.
yeah, yeah. Just playing around
See
with.
as you're going through if you can find where we hid the container images in Knative serving.
Okay, that sounds like a challenge, so I'll do that.
It is a challenge, but I'm happy to check your work and tell you if you missed them.
Okay. I'm also allowing for the possibility that it is not possible. Like there could be a tribal human link,
I mean,
or a conventional link.
It exists in software because the software either uses the container image, or if it's unable to assemble the container image, then it's unlikely to be able to use it.
Right. I just mean it might not be a clear link anywhere.
It may not be a clear link. Yes.
I've also found, like, you may have noticed that query just pulls the last release. When I was starting with this, it was like, okay, we'll pull the last 3 releases just to see. And so I started experimenting. Okay, pull the last 10 releases, and there's a lot of variance, I think, from project to project in how releases are used, because they might like one release set of artifacts might be like one platform, and another's another, and other people have one tagged release with multiple platforms in the artifacts.
I'm aware of all of these problems. I just realized that your query is also wrong.
Wrong? Like, it does return data. Wrong in which way?
You are trying to, well, okay, you've improperly specified what you want, and the computer will do a great job of giving you.
Yes, computers do exactly what you tell them to. They don't make value.
You are asking for the most recently created release.
Which the query is written to allow the last n recently created releases. It does need to have a branch filter spec to it, because right now releases, again, it's very early days. Like if I had a bunch of pride, and I wouldn't have shown anything for, yeah, go on.
Projects like Kubernetes maintain multiple release branches.
Right.
When they do a patch release, they may not ensure ordering between the releases on different branches.
Yes, that's what I was getting
at. So you may get a 131 latest version for Kubernetes instead of a 133 latest version for Kubernetes.
Yeah, right now the query just says chronologically what's by date.
It's looking chronologically, yes.
But I have a work item already that's what I mean. Like, I need to add branches to that query, so that what's the most recent release on, and then even then, like, what are the branches? That's a project by project walk too. Like, what are the ones that matter? So I'm hoping to talk to Justin about Kubernetes release stuff.
No,
not Justin. I'm sorry. Jeremy. Rickard.
Yeah.
I have a note to talk with him to get a more in-depth look, or a series of pointers on Kubernetes release processes for that other initiative. But I haven't
Kubernetes release processes may or may not be a thing that we want other CNCF projects to emulate.
That's what he said too. He said a lot of the thought and definition of like what are the problems and guidance around communication workflows out of Kubernetes is useful, but specifically the tooling that they use is not something that we want necessarily, or even the Kubernetes project wants.
I was actually thinking that some of the processes as well are.
Oh, really?
Kubernetes has a release team.
They do.
It is not the same set of people for each release.
Mm-hmm.
They get new volunteers for each release. And part of it is because it's a pretty intensive process.
Yeah.
And they're going to get a lot of dropout and burnout.
That's too bad. Yeah. The
Um,
way they're doing it now, so there's like a human ongoing cost.
There's substantial ongoing human cost in the way Kubernetes does it. And Kubernetes is large enough and important enough with enough moving pieces and consequences when things go wrong that it's worth paying that cost.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense.
But it's a cost that may not be successfully borne by smaller projects. So the process of KEP approval and gating inclusion in releases upon KEPs reaching certain stages and backing KEPs out of releases if they don't reach those gates may not be sustainable for I don't know, let's say external secrets operator.
Yeah, or any number of other projects that have a much
Yes,
smaller.
I'm picking on external secrets operator given the recent brouhaha. But are there not probably 50 CNCF projects in a similar boat?
There are,
So,
actually, I can say definitively.
yes.
Okay.
So anyway, for that other thing, I think it's worth looking at Kubernetes and understanding why it is the way it is. I would be cautious about emulating human-driven processes from Kubernetes without a clear plan as to where the effort comes from. Because there is a lot of effort there. And I don't think it's wrong or ill-spent, but I don't think most folks can afford it.
Yeah.
And on those words of wisdom, I'm out.
Okay.